SABC News and for dressing me this afternoon.
Thank
you
you
don't
so
have
much.
a physical store. How do you let people know about your products and try and convince them to buy from you?
So Instagram's been wonderful for entrepreneurs of all different businesses. So I do fashion weeks and I do Instagram, and I have a long-standing clientele for the past 20 years. And they basically will then see something that I've posted, they'll be interested in it, they'll come to my studio, and then we can either they buy off the rail or we design and make something for them specifically.
Now, you've worked in retail before. How has this experience helped you to make sure that you can market your clothing?
Look, marketing for any independent is always challenging because we don't have the marketing budgets that big business has, that big brands have. So it's very important that we have relationships with, well, nowadays it's Instagrammers, bloggers, influencers. But for me personally, people who wear my clothes are people who have an opinion and they look good in it. And generally speaking, a lot of my clientele is word of mouth. So that somebody will see somebody at an occasion or event and say, oh wow, I like that, where did you get it? And that's how I get a lot of my clientele. I used to be in YDE for a number of years. I also used to supply to chain store. So I understand that marketing is extremely important and it's the driver for all businesses. It is challenging for me to this day to try and do that. So you've got to be determined, you've got to get somebody who helps with social media, but you've got to be posting every single day. So that's a job on its own.
Talk to us about what goes into deciding how to price your garments, because again, you don't have the safety net of large numbers like a bigger chain store would have.
So for me, obviously you take your actual cost, you take what the market's willing to pay for it, and you take your experience. A lot of my stuff is bespoke, private clientele, so they already know they're going to be paying a certain price point. When we do more commercial stuff, I do try and price it, kind of look at what the chains are selling at and where you fit in the market, and you go with those prices. Mm-hmm. You can't also, you know, what you give the market, they always say you can't go into low because then you can't grow, and you can't go into high because then you kind of isolate everybody. So you got to just get the right price point, and that can be very challenging.
How supportive is the South African environment for a fashion designer who's working by themselves, especially when there's this fast fashion, there's this cheap fashion that's always out, and people are saying, well, I don't want to pay more than X amount for something because I can get it cheaper from someone else? I
think for me the biggest challenge, and probably the reason I left chain store, was we used to be in YDE as an independent brand. With the influx of the Chinese market, the cheap fashion, throwaway fashion, instant fashion really affected us. And I think for me now, the clientele that I have are far more informed. So for me, what I make it a kind of my mantra is to educate people about what you're buying, who you're buying it from, be ethical. And I'm about slow fashion, not instant fashion, because for a lot of people it's about the price point, you know, the bottom line. And for me, it's not about that. For me, it's about empowering people who work for me, and about keeping South Africans employed. I mean, in our industry, we've seen many businesses close. Companies that have been around for years and years, like hip hop is an example. And I mean, you would think that somehow, you know, everybody else gets bailouts. You'd wish that we would get bailouts for the fashion industry, because it's a really tough market to be in, and especially, like you say, with all the international competitors. And now we have the likes of Zara, H&M, Mr. Price, Cotton On, and I wouldn't say they're my direct competition, but they definitely affect the way people buy.
Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Tasleem Bulbulia from Bulbulia Threads, talking to us about her designs and her experience of fashion in South Africa. Let's go over to